Hey everybody, this is Ryan with Rigs of Death Metal today. My guest is Robert Radke of Fell Ruin. Rob, how's it going, man?
Going pretty good, man. Chilling here in Michigan. We actually got some days of not shitty weather this week, so just went outside and enjoyed that for a little bit this morning and did an arm day on way too much caffeine. So if I'm a little jittery, if there's any guitar playing, I apologize up front.
It's all good. I'm running off of a couple monsters myself, so probably a little bit the same.
What's your go-to monster?
Dude, I don't know why for like a decade I've been addicted to the low carb black
The
and blue.
regular black and blue.
Yeah. I,
Try the Aussie lemonade if you ever find it. It's a full sugar one, so you're gonna be shaky as shit, but it's like a carbonated lemonade.
I did not know that was even a thing. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
Dude, there's a Moscow Mule one too that's like the unicorn, like so hard to find, but that one's really good too. So it's like a
Is
ginger beer
I have
monster.
had that one.
Okay.
It threw me off. I I don't know what I was expecting, but it threw me for a loop. Uh,
Yeah.
I was like, okay. I mean, I finished it. It was fine. I don't know if I'm normally not big on ginger. That's the thing with that. I had to try it though.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. Ginger's a hit or miss for a lot of people.
Yeah. People are probably like, I don't give a fuck about ginger. I
Yeah.
want to hear the amps.
We'll get there.
Sure. Um, well, yeah. So Fell Ruin has been on a regular rotation for me lately. It's so I'm pretty stoked to have you on. It's I don't know. I love really dissonant chords that you can actually like hear everything ringing out, and there's tons of that in there, and
Yeah.
I love that. Um,
Yeah, it's a very deliberate part of our sound, I would say. There's a tricky spot between finding that right amount of distortion to still have clarity, like when I'm adding like a ninth to a chord or something, like way up there. Because once you start coloring too much distortion, it just becomes like this kind of wall of mush. So I probably play with less gain than people would expect, but it's still enough to make dads angry.
sure. No, I totally get it. It well, we'll just kind of dive into gear. This will be our little segue here.
Okay.
I know you're a big fan of the Ibanez universe, and do you have two or three of them now?
Oh geez. Four,
Four?
and then I have one that isn't a universe, but I had a clone made that's basically a vine inlay, one of the shocking pink gems as a UV. Lee from GMW Guitar Works actually painted that out in California. He does a lot of like those BC Rich
Oh yeah,
restorations and crackle finishes, but dude, he killed it. It's like a obnoxious hot pink with like under the trim cavity, it's painted like a chartreuse bright neon green, and then I just kind of pieced it together with knobs and stuff. So not a true universe, but then I have that a green dot, and then one of the actual green ones with a maple board, and then right next to me is this beat up PWH that I've been using live for probably the last year. I bought it from a pawn shop in Japan. It's like crazy cheap back in the day, and it actually came with a pick guard from a Green Dot Universe on it, which I sold for like $200 by itself. And with the
Jesus.
money, I bought a single ply pick guard aftermarket and then a single Fishman Classic and the power pack for it, which is a trim cover that I just kind of sawed down the ends of because it was too big for an Ibanez cavity. Put it in there. So just plug into USB here to charge it. There's no 9-volt involved. But yeah, they're the universes are just magical for me. This one in particular is kind of the road dog of the crew. I did the sticker treatment on it. It was kind of like my Andreas Kisser, like the old Charvels that he had
Sure.
covered in sticker tribute. So just like ridiculous dumb stickers all over it. But this one was refretted last year with 6100 stainless steel, so they're a little bigger than what you usually see. Most universes are like medium jumbo frets, which should surprise a lot of people. But it's kind of like when you play like an old Gibson Les Paul custom with those low frets, and people are like, "Oh, this is gonna suck," but you can just glide over that shit so fast.
Hmm.
This one's got a little bit bigger of a fret. They're stainless, so I'm hoping I never have to touch them again. And then whoever had it before me in Japan did like a partial scallop. It's really hard to capture on film, but basically there's like bullet scallops from the 12th up, and they
Okay.
kind of get longer as you go toward the 24th fret. But yeah, this one it's just they're consistent guitars, man. And the neck on them, it's actually there's no poly. It's an oil finish, which back in the
Oh,
early
nice.
90s was like, cutting edge. No one was doing that on production guitars.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's got a nice thin profile. So yeah, I primarily record with universes. The other ones are way cleaner than this. So I'm like, you know what, you can just be like studio guitars at this point. Like scary taking the nice ones out on the road. So
Of course.
mainly I go between this and then I have a 7620 that I put a pick guard and Fishman modern influences in. And that one, it plays a lot like Universe. I sanded down the neck to oil, and then I put lumen lace side markers. We play under like the darkest red light possible on stage, so any markers kind of cancel out. So any help I can get on seeing the fretboard, I'm gonna take full advantage of.
Gotcha.
So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
so Universes are like kind of studio besides that one. And then the other guitar I've been using live for the last couple of years is this, which is it's a Rico Junior, but it's not. I bought it off eBay and it was literally just a neck through blank from when his shop went under. Like, see, there's no logo on the headstock.
Sure.
But it was raw mahogany. I stained it myself, put on this shitty cover myself, and outfitted it with a brass block on a Floyd Road original, and then it's got a Sir neck pickup and this company my buddy actually winds pickups in Columbus. His name's Mike Moses, really great tattooer, but he runs a
Oh
pickup
yeah.
company called Black Try. So I had him wind me a custom black on black. Basically, the slugs and screws are black on the bobbins. So it's a pretty high output. It's like 17 ohm pickup. My sound, it's sort of more low end focused than a lot of people think. I'm lucky to be in a band with like a really good bass player. So like Jeff will do a lot of like these little runs or like it's sort of like lead bass lines. So in a sense, he's playing up way higher on the neck of like a 5-string bass. So I'll hold down the low end for those sections. So I basically EQ for like a pretty fat tone. When I was a kid, I was all about like scooping the mids and stuff until I started
Yeah.
playing live, and I was like, "What the fuck? I can't hear anything." So I pushed my mids up a lot, and then basically use a tube screamer or something like a tube screamer to push it up a little with some clean gain and maybe tighten it up. Um, right now, my pedal board is like super limited. It's actually right below us and probably not even worth a picture for what it is. But I run single channel tube heads into a line 6 helix and 4 cable method. So all my distortion tones are coming out of the amps preamp section basically. And then I run a couple high wind pedals in there. I have a Dire Wolf, which is like a tube screamer on steroids, and that's always in a loop. So that hits the front of the amp. And then I have one of Jordan's noise gates, the Phalanx, that he did in a pink enclosure for me. I was on a big Bret Hart kick at the time, so just went for it.
Fuck
And
yeah.
so I keep that in the loop because the my main amp, which is right behind us, is this 2204 from 1982. It's I have a million other Marshalls. It's a modded JMP on top of it, but nothing sounds like this amp. Like people always want like the 2203, the 100 watters, which I do have. This is a 2203. It's just a JMP model,
Mhm.
but you're talking maybe 4 dB at maxed out volume of difference between a 50 and a 100 watt, and this amp on like master volume 3 or 4 is enough to like get this room shaken. So it's like it's kind of overkill to say, you need that extra headroom on the 100 watter, because even like cranked at venues, if I'm typically mic'd, the master on that's not going above like a 3, maybe a 4.
Yeah.
This one has been modded though, so I have the fortune of living really close to Bruce Agnator. So like E3 Audio. She's awesome, cranky old man, super chill, will tell you stories about working on Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff. Like he's got stories about everyone, but he basically runs a little tiny shop now. He's sort of not retired. He's still doing those amp building classes, but it's
Hmm.
kind of just like small repairs and stuff. So when I got this amp, it came from Reverb, and I bought it from a dude that had it modded by Voodoo Amps, which I think is out of New York. And for some
Yeah.
reason, they did a brightness mod to it, so it actually had more brightness on tap, which I'm like an 800's already like pretty
Sure.
shimmery. Like you don't need it, you know. But the kicker for me was me and Jeff plugged it in this room, and all of a sudden it started picking up AM religious stations, and it sounded just like the Soul Glow guy from Coming to America talking through the amp. It was pretty sick, but not what I was looking for in an amp. So I gave it to Bruce. He threw in an extra tube preamp for an extra gain stage, and then one of the Metropolis effects loops. And then he put a depth knob on the back for the power amp and actually forgot he did it. I was like, Bruce, what's this knob? And he goes, did I put that there? And I'm like, yes. What is it? And he realized what it was, and he just grabbed the sticker that says depth and threw it right on it in front of me.
That's
So
hilarious.
yeah, so this amp it gets a lot fatter than that typical 800, and there's just so much extra gain on tap. Like I just sold a twin jet Ubershaw that I had for probably 4 years, and this thing I would say had as much, if not more, bottom end than that, and it's only got EL34s. The Uber was like KT88s. A big thick tone, but still, this thing, there's just something about that EL34 mid range cut when we're playing live. It's like heaven. I can hear everything in my ears. Um, Rarely have to tweak with the monitors too much on that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the bread and butter of my tone. On the last album, I did that for half the rhythm tracks, and then the other half, I sort of went the opposite direction and did a really modern amp.
Hmm.
On our rack shelf back here, which you can't see on camera, there's stacks of amps, and I have an Omega. It's actually an Iridium. It's one of the first generation
Okay.
grandifiers, which Mike's super awesome to deal with. Again, I'm really fortunate that their shop is literally 15 minutes from my house.
Nice.
So I bought one when they first came out. I also have an Omega 412 here that I've had since like 2016 that I got when Mike was still in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
We've always stayed in contact. I actually loaned him a couple of my 800s when they were working on a as yet announced third amp model, which I'm not sure what the timetable is on that because I think he might be doing some other super secret stuff. But yeah, it was about a year ago. I loaned him this one and then a stock 2203. And he was kind of going for a modded Marshall tone, but what he showed me was like that plus some. Like he
Hmm.
basically, I saw him play the amp with like just the amp chilling on blocks of wood with no head shell, like it was just biased. And
Yeah.
it's going to be pretty sick if they end up doing it. So I'm hoping they come out with that because I'm imagining like a more British voice, but still kind of have that Omega like, chunk and dryness that they have.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's something to look forward to.
Fuck yeah. That's sick. I'm a huge Omega fan. Um, which I mean, I'm just messing with Kemper profiles of them, and I'm big fan just off of that alone. A
Yeah,
lot
I
of.
love the Temper, man. I used one live. Kind of, I play it by ear on the show, like first venue size and then the run of shows.
Mhm.
So like down here, like there's a Kemper in there.
Okay,
Like it's just simple, dude. I plug in that profiler remote and live, I'm good to go, and it's a consistent tone night to night.
yeah.
So especially in venues where I'm going to be running something direct in, I'll try to bring the Kemper. I love the tube amps, but they're the ones I use are 40 years old because I'm an idiot. So it's like
Yeah.
they're reliable, but they're still getting up there in age.
Sure. Um, it's interesting with running the Helix. I know you said your gain is coming from your tube heads. Do you use like the Helix for um like to bypass the preamp of the Marshall and use it like amp models in the Helix for like clean tones and stuff like
That's
that?
that's exactly what I do. So yeah, so basically I have the dire wolf is pushing out a tiny bit of gain, but it's more there as a clean boost, and then I use the high gain input on the JCM, which adds that extra tube Bruce put in, and I keep the preamp gain around 6. It's not like anything too crazy. This amp has a really brutal noise floor, so it's like the higher I get that, the higher I got to crank the noise gate, and then I start seeing like pinch harmonics get cut off, or the little annoying things you got to tweak out here and
Yeah.
there. So yeah, about there is a pretty happy spot for me. The where it gets tricky is when you swap amps on the Helix. You can assign the line outs to be instrument or line level, so you just kind of got to match it to whatever effects loop the amp has. Because there's been
Sure.
times where I forget and I'm going from instrument to line level, and all of a sudden my clean tone is like rocking the whole fucking boat, like just shaking a room. Like, oops. But yeah, it's simplified the process for me. I'm big on using modern technology, but to kind of integrate old shit and make it as simple as possible. Because like if I didn't have this set up, I'd be dealing with like probably an outboard clean preamp and then toe tapping that plus a chorus and delay or whatever.
Oh yeah.
My tones tend to have they're a little more effects driven, so there'll be some kind of ambient delay on there. Some of them have like a little like vibrato effect, kind of a tremolo sort of deal, just like kind of more shimmery. And
Hmm.
also with the Helix, I'm able to use the expression pedal built in it for a lot of the volume swells where I'm mimicking like the synth parts on the album. We've been using samples live for a lot of stuff the last 6 months, but there's still some things where we kind of try to, between bass and guitar, blend the synth elements from the album in and just kind of make it a more presentable live without being
Hmm.
like, oh, waiting around for a sample to play kind of vibe.
Sure.
Because like I first and foremost, we are like a live band. We kind of use the studio as a time to like those last few bursts of creativity coming out after you got like the skeleton of a song together, kind of organize those thoughts in there. But then the tricky part is whatever you put into it in the studio, making sure that comes across live, because only guitar player in the band. I multi-track everything. So I kind of, when we put together stuff live, I got to look at the composition and be like picking and choosing which riffs or which elements are going to be
Oh
the most
yeah.
important to come through live. Isn't always the easiest to do, but I end up playing things different from how I record them as a result of just blending multiple stuff together, like throwing in a harmony
Hmm.
over the bass, playing the static line kind of stuff.
That's so interesting to me.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like it's one guitar player band problems, I'm pretty sure, but I
yeah,
do it to myself. It's like, the more colors you paint on the picture, and then you're like, oh shit, look at all that detail. So it's like I set myself up for it. I like the challenge of it, I guess. It is fun to go back after the fact and kind of almost like reverse engineer a writing process to figure out like, okay, how the fuck can I make this one?
sure. And it kind of makes me think of like when I was learning songs as a teenager, kind of thing, and you're hearing all these different guitar layers overdubbed and going between two different players, and you're kind of like unconsciously at the time, kind of merging different parts together to,
Oh yeah.
kind of some sort of middle ground, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, I remember doing that for some bands so like I kind of started off as like a punk kid. There was a lot of like DIY elements in the scene I was in. So it was like you had all these like real quick thrown together like grindcore bands and stuff, and we all just kind of naturally kept evolving stuff like that. But dude, I remember like even my late teens, like listening to like that first Kill Switch Engage album and thinking that was all one guitar, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And my hand is stretching like first fret to eighth fret, and I'm like, no, there's no way they did this kind of stuff. And then you watch it live or whatever, and you're like, holy shit, I was way off. Like, there's two people doing this. Um, so like, yeah, for me, it was like kind of catching up with that stuff, or like I for like biggest influence even on like my tuning and stuff, and like people probably wouldn't outwardly think of it, but it was Carcass. Like growing up, they were tuning to B but playing six strings and just trying to figure out those Heartwork songs by ear as a kid, and then watching a video or a live video or thank God now for stuff like Guitar Pro and Songster and whatever else, it makes life a lot easier. But I still try to transcribe a lot of stuff by ear as I did as a kid back then. And, was constantly rewinding a CD or whatever. At least, I was around after cassettes, at least. I guess I had that going for me.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's just kind of funny because your ear does tend to hear it as the bigger piece. And then when you're trying to play it, you almost have to play an isolation game between tracks to kind of get the whole picture. So
sure.
yeah, totally feel you there.
So, going back to the guitars, what model Fishmans are you using? Just like the Fluence moderns, or
I've tried most of them. I've tried most of the six string variants, and I keep coming back to the moderns for the recording guitars, at least for rhythms. There's something about them. They just have this snarl in the mid range that I can EQ in pretty easily. Minimal kind of fidgeting with the EQ. And then the other thing for me, it's so weird, but every time I play a new pickup, like I test like how easy it is to get harmonics out of them, just because I play with so much in terms of whether it's pinch harmonics or kind of doing the dime bag and grabbing like a natural harmonic and pulling it with the bar. And then a lot of controlled feedback sections in our songs that require like kind of to have that harmonic fundamental. So I need a pickup usually in the high gain category. If it's like a mid gain pickup, I might use it to record cleans or crunchy stuff, and then
Mhm.
either push the shit out of it with something on the front end, or just grab a different guitar for the high gain recording.
Gotcha.
Um, the universe that I have here, actually, I bought this
Mm.
before they made them. I guess they make an open coil version of the modern now, but this is one of the Fishman Classic pickups, and it's kind of on like a JB, like a hot rodded sort of humbucker vibe. And then I put in the coil switch, so like middle is like the lower gain PAF pickup, and then you can actually do a single coil on it too. So like
Hell yeah.
I'll use the single coil for the clean stuff. Most of the RGs, I use that split position for the clean tone where you get the one coil of each pickup.
Oh
Basically,
yeah.
it's like the fourth up position. I just wire all the guitars to that, which you can luckily do with like the Fishman pickups. They have a coil tap on the back. I guess it's a clip in now. When I bought them, it was all first generation shit, so I had to like solder to this pad on the back of the pickup and just be like, hope this works. And
Gotcha.
luckily it did. I have a background in telecommunication engineering, so like usually voltoming around. I modify a lot of old video game consoles, so I'm like guitar pickups. I can usually figure that shit out. So
Fuck yeah.
yeah, not too bad. If you can find continuity, you can usually figure it out.
Well, now I'm just curious. Another rabbit trail here. What kind of do you say you actually like mod old game consoles, or you like just repair them?
Yeah, so like a lot of them I'll do for like RGB output, so you can use them with like component cables or like HDMI. There's a lot of HDMI mods out for systems now. They're pretty expensive, but I go back to like basically I grew up playing Nintendo, so anything like 8-bit and up, I
Hmm.
usually have some form of console for. So like I have a couple. I collect Japanese ones, so like the Famicoms were the
Yeah.
Nintendos, and so like I got a couple of those that I can run to an upscaler and actually play the real console on my TV. Because if you don't like, there's a lot of input lag on those old systems going to like an HD TV. It doesn't feel the best. It's like spongy is what I would describe the control as.
Gotcha.
So yeah, luckily there's these little like RGB amps you can basically install and bypass components in the systems, or a
Hmm.
lot of them can like mod to play like CDR backups or DVD-R backups, stuff like that. So yeah, I was always tinkering around with that shit from a young age, and it was kind of like that and guitar playing met in my life at sort of the same time. And once I realized like, oh my God, the guitar is like an electrical circuit, I was like, fuck this. I'm just gonna start doing my own. So like I remember being like 15 years old and installing like my first Seymour Duncan pickup in a BC Rich Warlock I still have, like stuff like that.
Damn.
Just going for it, I'm like, how bad can it be? Spoiler alert, it can be very bad sometimes.
You're a lot braver than me. I just learned how to solder like a few years ago or something.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, it's an amazing skill to have. Even like if you're on the road or something, you can buy like a mini USB chargeable iron now just for emergency fixes. Cause like
fuck yeah.
with me, like our live shows, we play them under like really intense red light, and it's like I don't get stage fright, but you're up there and you're moving around, and I like just like at the gym, dude, I sweat so bad. Like I've burnt out. Like I have that. I did. It's not here, but I have that Crown Guitars Flying V that he built me. I sweated through the pickup on that, the black tri pickup at a house show, just covered. It was like a Halloween show, and we had makeup on, and I was just like dripping it into the pickup. And I went to play it the
Oh
next week, and
man.
I'm like, oh, it sounds like a single coil, like shorted out a coil. So like, I've had to swap pickups just because I'm a wet boy with the guitars. Is what it is, I guess.
Which, by the way, that V is super, super sick.
Yeah, I
Um,
want to put that more in the live rotation this year. It's a unique build, man. The body's like Spanish cedar. Everyone thinks it's mahogany, but it came from like planks that were cut down from like a pole barn they were found in a pole barn from the 1850s. So I was like,
wow.
once my buddy told me that, I'm like, yes, I want that. Whatever you think is best, please do it. So like it's that, and then like a mahogany cap or a maple cap on top that's like the same thickness as the body. So it's like 50-50 cedar and maple. And then I got I know I told you about it before, but yeah, I got a Radical Instrument Products V on order too. That's going to mimic some of the Felrun art for it. It's going to have like our cross sigil as the inlay. So that should be done this year. Rob's been super chill to work with. He gives me updates all the time. Just call me and kind of let me know what's up. And he's touring full time too, so it's pretty sweet to
Yeah.
have that level of customer service from him.
Rob is an awesome dude, and he's definitely easily one of the top builders for our scene right now, for sure.
Yeah, I'm stoked to get my hands on it, man.
Uh one of these I keep telling myself one of these days I'm gonna pick up whatever, like one of his like batch runs or something like that. You know,
Yeah, honestly, if I played more six strings, I probably would have done the same. I pretty much am seven string for everything now, except if I'm giving lessons, I have an old Charvel Model 2 that I bust out for those.
oh, that's
Just,
sick.
yeah, simple little, one humbucker deal.
I was eyeballing a Charvel Skatecaster like yesterday.
Really, you know what, dude? It's so funny with those. I always associate that with Scott Ian because of
Yeah.
the only video he was playing like a Surfcaster, and I was like, wait, heavy
Oh
metal people are
yeah.
play these? Like,
Uh that and then like Rob Caggiano, you know, like
yeah,
which yeah. Uh I thought that metallic purple one that he put out was really sick looking. But
yeah, that was pretty rad. Yeah, so it's a total side story, but I met those guys at a record store for an in-store signing when I was like 18, and the only one I really want to talk to was like Scott and Charlie, like the cork sniffer. But Scott had already left, so Charlie was there, and he's like looking at like Husker Du albums, just hanging out in the alt rock section. So I talked to him about like Minneapolis music, and then like I'm not a drummer at all, and I was just like, that's a really cool dime bag custom shop you have. Like thinking of like seeing a picture of him playing it. And he was like totally not having it with the guitar talk. It was so funny, man. It's like just nope.
yeah, yeah, the guys at that level, they're probably just kind of over it to a certain
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah, that's the total vibe I got. It was funny though, anyway, in my young mind.
And that is they're like old like New York kind of punk dudes too on top of it, you know. They,
Yeah.
they probably give zero fucks about anything.
Yeah, that like kind of on that end, it's funny, man, because like that first SOD album, like I hope people see it as like a joke now, and because
Oh
like
yeah,
the political correctness would be gone, but Scott Ian's tone on that like had like a huge impact on me as a kid. It was definitely like hardcore-ish songs, but you could tell they were metal dudes playing it, you know what I mean? um
definitely.
just and it turned out he was same shit as me. It was an 800 with like a preamp in front of it, and I'm just like, damn, dude, like if it ain't broke.
Uh, I was about to ask. I was about to ask some Scotty and Gear questions, and I was no, we're definitely rabbit trailing bad now. Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to do when you're a gear nerd. Um, well, let's before we delve too far down the rabbit hole, um, let's talk songwriting a little bit. What would you say? Where would you say you kind of draw influence for a lot of the Fell Ruin stuff?
It's hard, man. I like you gave me these questions ahead of time, and I answered most of them in my brain, and then I dwell on it and be like, ah, wait. But for us, it's tough to say. I'll say a couple people that I really look up to in terms of like making something dissonant but still catchy or accessible would be like Luke LeMay from Gorguts, Trey from Morbid Angel. That's like where I get like playing a seven string from. It's like him, and then coincidentally like the Carcass tuning, like I talked about earlier. But I was always drawn to that kind of the slow plodding morbid riffs with like the big octave slides or maybe like a nasty bar dive and like up break on the strings or whatever it is. So anything where it was like you felt like this person has control of their instrument to such a level that they know how to do the wrong things on it and make it sound cool. So like I was always like really really big into that. I listened to like early Florida death metal like every kid. Like I'm 41, so like I was still buying Hannibal albums when Chris Barnes was in the band, like as a child. So like I came up with like sort of like a stew of that old like Florida death metal scene mixed with like hardcore bands like Sick of It All or Poison Idea, like bands that were hardcore but leaned way on the heavy side for that type of stuff. Whether it be more in terms of attitude or tone. But yeah, a lot of that writing that we do in Fell Ruin, it kind of comes from like being four dudes who grew up in a death metal scene. Like two of us, Jeff and August in the band, were in this tech death band called Flesh Eating Flesh, which was very very techy, very brutal. Two guitar players. So they've been collectively playing together for probably 17 years because we've been together for 10 and they were already together for like 7 or 8 before that. I knew him as kids, so like we're kind of all in this shared scene. And then Brian's a little younger, so he kind of came up in like the next wave of the scene that came around, like half a generation, 4 or 5 years, something like that. But yeah, it was sort of like just this big soup for me of like hearing all that stuff. Cause like I always tell people like when they ask about us, I'm like, yeah, these songs end up like being kind of super long and non-repetitive, but it just happens organically. Like if we could write a short song, we probably would just to make life easier on ourselves, but it just never seems there's always another idea kind of brewing, so it kind of moves in like a an orchestral or like sort of cinematic flow through the pieces. When we first started doing it, I thought I was fucked, remembering how to play all this stuff live and pull it off, but they kind of lock in your muscle memory. So
Yeah.
it's like I take all that death metal influence and all that, but then I listen to like a lot of Depeche Mode, a lot of Rush. Um, so like the kind of quieter ambient passages are usually influenced somewhere else. Even like stuff like Cathedral, Anathema, all that kind of like early British 90s doom stuff. I was really into Cradle when I was a kid, stuff like that. I was recovering goth child from high school. So like the first black metal show I ever saw was like Cradle and Demu together. And it was just like I'm just like, okay, I guess that's what it is. Like you need
Yep.
an orchestra and a
This
fucking
is
lady
this
that
is me.
sings. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like so easy, right? But yeah, so like the thing that's cool about Felruin is we all play instruments, so it's like it's not just on me to write, luckily, because the pressure of that would just be insane. And I think those bands that have like one primary songwriter, like nothing against them, but you have to be the most creative motherfucker around and not make song A sound like song B because it's just so hard sometimes when people lock into a style or something like that. So like I give those people that can be the band leader like a lot of credit, but at the same time I sort of like this situation I'm in where each of us will sort of bring like a a skeleton of an idea, maybe a couple riffs, or even part of a riff. August, our drummer, has sent me riffs that he's wrote on xylophone before, and I've had to transcribe them to guitar. Luckily, I got him a 7 string guitar, so that doesn't happen too often anymore, and he just sends me guitar parts. But we all sort of bring something to the table, and then Brian, our singer, while he plays guitar, he handles basically all the visuals of the band and the lyrics. So he's more like, hey, can you guys extend this part a little bit so I can do more vocally over it or something like that. But we all sort of contribute to the writing process in our own ways, and then still have a DIY ethic to the band too. Like Brian does most of the art. We've had some friends do shirts for us and stuff like that. Brian does the music videos, album layout, all that stuff. Jeff's a tattooer and he has a background in graphic design. He actually designed our logo, like the Felroon logos in original font. So like he created that for us. So we all each kind of bring little extra side hustles to the equation to sort of make stuff go smoother, I guess.
in proper DIY fashion.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as close as we can get. Like we are lucky. Like this last album, like we had label support for that. We worked with Tartarus overseas for the vinyl and cassette pressings, and then the regular CDs, and then our buddy Don Durr, who he used to be in Temple of Void. He's actually doing live sound for Suffocation right now
No
overseas in
shit.
Germany. Dude, yeah, he's the best. He was running a label called Death Psalm in the States, and we did a limited edition casket box set of the last CD. So it's like a beautiful, like hand cut, hand assembled little plastic or cardboard box, and then there's a lot of foil in it, kind of embossed stuff like that. They're hand numbered. They're pretty cool. We only did a real small run. It was like 30 or 40 of them, and they're pretty much gone now. But our friend Camille put those together for us. He's another Detroit-based artist, and then Don released them. But yeah, Don's the man, dude. Like, I don't know if you ever need anyone for like live sound for anything, like hook up with that guy. 'Cause he like he's a dude that just kind of like made his own destiny, and I'm so fucking proud of him for it. He was like in bands, working, restaurant gigs. And one day he's like, fuck it, I'm gonna start doing live sound. So he started doing little gigs, and then he fucking sends an email to Trey from Morbid Angel and gets 2 Morbid tours out of it. And he's just shot up since then. That's like since COVID, like the last few years. So it's like it's never too late, folks.
Holy shit. I know you've kind of going back to influences. I know I definitely hear the Luke LeMay and definitely hear Trey at different, sometimes back-to-back times throughout the music.
Yeah.
Um, and with Luke, I definitely hear like the dissonance, ringing out like kind of ugly chords.
Yeah.
With Trey, kind of an overall chaotic sense. Both of them have a very dissonant, very chaotic kind of sense of songwriting. Trey maybe leaning a little bit more into groove and even some like Eddie Van Halen kind, esque,
Yeah.
layering of effects and stuff. But um, I feel like there is kind of this with yours. There's that plus this layer of borderline black metal, kind of evil, dark kind of thing going on over top of it. Like the chords aren't just dissonant and ugly, like sounding like, you know, a guitar falling down steps. It's more for the purpose of creating a darker kind of atmosphere.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I would say that's pretty fair to say. Another one we didn't talk on, and like I love the dude so much, like even on a personal level, like playing shows with him. But like Sammy from Goat Whore, like even going back pre Goat Whore, like those Acid Bath albums to me as a kid were like so fucking huge. And I think that's kind of where some of that like kind of like that snarl to the music comes from, like that sort of pissed off sense, and you're not sure like is this death metal, is this black metal, like what is this. With those guys I would say like it was more like this like sludgy thing, and probably like the clean and the mid crunch stuff is more where I get like that somber Acid Bath influence from. But and then Goathor came out and I was like, wait, this is the same guy that's in Crowbar too? What the fuck? And yeah, man, I just realized like you can use kind of like the call it the black metal paintbrush series to apply to different forms of metal. So like, yeah, like there's a lot of times, dude, I'll be pulling out like a big chord and and I'm doing a stretch so I can hit a root plus a minor second and a fifth somewhere way down the fucking thing. So like I'll kind of do that like flutter through the chord thing, like the very like emperor thing. Love like early dissection. I just never gravitated towards writing melodic stuff because I feel like people just kind of beat harmonic minor to death with a lot of like 90s early 2000s death metal and stuff like that. So I started looking at like weirder scales to do it with. I'm like, how can you make a whole half full half scale gross, like stuff like that. So almost taking like these sort of these jazz scales and
Hmm.
applying them to metal. And I mean, sometimes you're going to end up tweaking a note here or there, but yeah, that's that the black metal influence is kind of all over our stuff. When we started the band, it was August and Jeff's previous band, the tech one I was talking about, had broken up, Flesh Eating Flesh. And I'd known those guys forever, and I was friends with August's wife growing up. And she's like, "Well, Rob plays guitar and likes that shitty music you guys like, like she's not a death metal person at all." And we hooked up, me and August, and the big thing he was pushing, this is 10 years ago, was like Decibel Omega, like wanting to come across like that. And and I'm listening to stuff and I'm like, dude, they're doing harmonies like a half step apart. Like there's all kinds of craziness to it. And the only thing was like I always felt like the recordings maybe up until that Sand EP sort of were too lo-fi for me.
Hmm.
But I still took those black metal ideas from that of like they're playing stuff that's very dissonant and weird, but applying those those black metal structures or like playing principles too. So definitely have a lot of that in our stuff. We'll kind of have chords played against a static note where the root of the chord is changing, but maybe the fifth isn't or something like that. So yeah, that's definitely in there too.
I once you mentioned Sammy, I'm like, ah, there it is. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I
No,
def
Sammy's the best. These white glasses, Sammy tried them on last time he was in Detroit, and I wish I would have taken a picture of his reaction to wearing them because my eyes aren't bad, but one eye has a slightly worse prescription than the other, and
Oh,
I don't
really?
think Sammy was wearing any corrective lenses. So we did a shirt trade at our merch booths, and he's like, "Hey, can I try those on?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, you can try those on." But yeah, good times.
Fuck yeah. Um, Also, before I completely forget about it, you mentioned Mike Moses, Black Try, and I had a buddy who had a Frost Giant set and a Flying V forever ago, and I fucking loved them. I've tried messaging Mike on both the Black Try and his personal page. Do you? I'm trying to get a contact with him to see if he's still even doing pickups.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I think he's doing Black Try on a very like case by case basis now. He used to just do like a big drop a couple times a year. There would have been
Yeah,
like a day after Thanksgiving one, and then some other time, like maybe 6 months from them, like a summer one. But he's been so wrapped up in his tattoo shop, dude. But the
sure.
Black Try winding studio is in the basement of the tattoo shop. I went down there one time and he had these two magnets. I don't know if they're neodymium or whatever it's called, but I could not pull them apart with my hands. He had to use a press to pull them apart. It
Oh
was
wow.
fucking crazy. I'm like, why do you even have these? Like, what is this gonna do? But no, his pickups are great. I have so I got the one that I need to send back to him that I shorted the coil on, and then
Mm,
I actually have the first 7 string set he ever did, a prototype set, like way back in the day. And those I had in like a 7/4/21, like one of the hardtail old Japanese RGs.
yeah.
So like I use that as kind of like a demo guitar for different pickups for a long time, and they're super sick. I just can't find anything to go with them because the bass plates are crazy huge.
Mm,
So I need a guitar with either like a pick guard on it or something with really wide routes to hide it.
right.
And then I got a couple of his 6 strings that I've had in and out of guitars, and I usually just pull them out when I sold them. One's called a Forsetti AOC or something. It's absolutely like I had it in a ESP Eclipse, and it was fucking awesome. But yeah, he's hard to get a hold of. But I actually was texting him today about buying one of the new Cauldron Tattoo T-shirts. So I'll mention something to him tonight about
Oh
hooking
yeah.
you up. I'm sure he'd appreciate the exposure too. He's a really easy guy to work with. It's just like a lot of tattooers. It's they're gypsies. You know, it's hard to get a hold of.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, re Kind of shifting gears. I know you talked going going to influences and your beginnings and all that again. What was the initial like catalyst to get you into playing music in general? If you started off with guitar, like what was the first what was the first thing?
Yeah, so when I was about 12 years old, I've lived in Michigan most of my life. Besides a couple years, I lived in Tennessee when my mom moved there for a job, and I lived in New Orleans for like 6 months to work after Katrina. But anyway, um, I'd spend summers at my grandma's house, and she kind of lived in like a little like a castaway beach, not a beach town, but kind of like a little town on the lake up north. And there was this kid in town named Dave, and he was like the one kid that was into metal. So like every like first bad experience, like bad kid experience I had in my life was like listen to the first Cannibal Corpse album at Dave's. Saw the first time I saw a porno at Dave's house, like anything like that. You know what I mean? So he was a drummer, and he ended up buying from musician's friend one of the Performer Series Jackson Rhodes guitars, like the mid '90s. I
Yeah.
think they were made in Japan back then. Probably
Oh
an
yeah.
amazing guitar by today's standards. But he bought a black on black one, and he was like, "Dude, I want to play Metallica songs with someone. Will you learn how to play it on guitar so I can jam with someone?" And I'm like, "Okay." So he bought a couple tab books. So it was like figuring out how to read tabs with this kid, and then we jammed songs together, and we kind of went from that to like we got the Slayer Decade of Aggression tab book and started playing those songs. So like all my first experiences with like tuning to E flat and stuff like that were all based on those early tab books. And it's funny now, like years later, having learned those songs the right way in a lot of cases, I look back at them and I'm like, oh my God, this shit is so wrong in this book. And just who knows, a whole generation of kids learning to play Angel of Death wrong, like stuff like that. But yeah, that kid was super cool. We hung out for a lot of summers, and then coincidentally he became a tattoo artist, and I saw him at a tattoo convention while I was getting tattooed, and I was like laying on my stomach getting the back of my calf tattooed, and we didn't even say anything, but our eyes met, and I could tell like he was like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" And we kind of hooked up on Instagram a little bit after that and started talking. But yeah, dude, it was just I started playing guitar out of necessity from my friend to learn how to play the drums to Slayer and Metallica. And once I did, I just kind of fell in love with it. So it was like I was probably 12, maybe 13. So like I went from playing his Jackson to like begging my parents for a guitar, and they ended up getting me like one of they would have been a made in Mexico. It was probably like a '96 Squire Fat Strat, so it actually had a humbucker in it, which was really nice for me.
Sure.
So played that, and then I just started collecting like the metal guitars and stuff. I was a really big Jackson kid from like my teens to probably early 30s, and then I went through like a playing old vintage Les Paul phase, some PRS stuff, and I ended up getting a Sir 7 string I had on order and I forgot about, had to pay it off, forgot about it. Oops. And that was right around when Felrune started. So like our first probably 2 months of practice, I was using like a Silverburst 81 Les Paul custom tuned to B. And then I get this Sir
Jesus.
and that high E string on it. I'm like, oh my God, I got to start using this. Cause I guess we didn't discuss that. My tuning is kind of weird. So we tune from low to high, it's like B, E, A, D, F sharp, B, E. So it's basically, I think of it as a baritone six. So like from B, B to B plus a high E. It's helped me a lot just transferring scale patterns because I tend to think of them in terms of a 6 string window anyway. And I
Hmm.
didn't want the low B to be an afterthought. I'd rather have that more integrated since I know kind of where the high E is going to fall retrospect anyway.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, there's a lot of Felrune riffs that have an open F sharp, which I'm sure confuses people if they're trying to play it on a normal seven string. But the other thing we do, which is sort of a mind fuck, is instead of like concert pitch A440 being the de facto tuning, we tuned to 428. So it's like it's almost a quarter step flat thereabouts, but it just added something extra. And honestly, man, I think we got it just from like me and Jeff hanging out and probably getting high and talking about old Machine Head and Pantera albums and how like to back in the day we tune our instruments by ear to the album, like find the open E note on a riff and then
Hmm.
tune to it so you were actually in pitch with the album because like even people were using strobe tuners and stuff back then, but a lot of stuff was being taped reel to reel, and if that reel speed was a little different, your tuning's going to be a little different. So like I consider myself lucky to grow up learning to play guitar when I did because I kind of got to be in the last spot of transcribing stuff by ear, figuring out bands tunings, and meanwhile, like right after my teen years, the internet kind of shot off. So like
Yeah.
I was still young enough to know how to use the technology to still kind of grasp all that stuff. So like I take full advantage of it. Like now I write most of my riffs in either one of two ways. I'm either playing guitar and I fuck up and end up on a rabbit hole of whatever that fuck up was being interesting to my ear and trying to exploit it, or I hum shit into my cell phone and play it back later. And a lot of times like my day job, like I'm on the road a lot, I have to use Guitar Pro. I use it on my phone and I will literally tap out the thing that I've hummed into the cell phone voicemail and kind of go from there. Those tools are so invaluable. Like I was a really big theory kid growing up. I wanted to know like the ins and outs of how music works. So like study my ass off or like all those guitar grimoire books. And now I have an app on my phone that'll show me the circle of fifths and it'll show me any scale in any key in one click of a button. So those kind of
Gotta love
resources
it.
are cool. Um, I just kind of I still enjoy the theory aspect of music and seeing how parts work, but sort of where Felrune is, I'm more in the mindset of seeing how to break parts and still make them work, or embrace the dissonance. We Our writing process, like when we're in here collectively, we actually have a dry erase board on the walls. So like whatever song we're working on, we'll just throw it up there, and the riffs usually get nicknames. So like the ones that are up here right now, it's like dissonant puke riff, sound check riff, stuff like that. They're like it's these little like kind of like codes for what the part entails. And usually like if we call something like pukey or seasick, it's going to be a lot of open strings against dissonant notes, but moving through a chord progression instead of being static. So it's kind of like it's throwing you around from side to side.
Sure.
Play around with a lot of stuff like that. One thing I am super interested in, a buddy of mine just told me about it yesterday. He's like a fucking mad science with amps. He has built a rig that can detect on frequency of the note played which amp it should go to, which just blows my fucking
Hmm.
mind. So like imagine if he had everything set up so like everything over I don't know 80 hertz goes through the Fender Twin and everything else goes through like an octaver into like a bass rig. Like it does it in real time, and I'm like, if you could figure out how to make this compact and sell it, you'd probably have a lot of money right now.
Right.
Like it sort of reminded me like he's definitely into more traditional metal and maybe like older doomy stuff. Like I could see him being like a Pentagram dude. But I was thinking of like Aesop Mongo from No Cure, like playing bass
Yeah.
live. Like they have that Iron Bird that's got a bass pickup in it and a humbucker. And I'm like, imagine if you had frequency detection on that. Like you could just basically micromanage your whole rig sonically. It just
That
sounds
is insane.
super interesting to me, you know?
No, definitely. I had some when I had more gear. Um, I downsized and then grew back a little bit, but I had my dual rectifier and an Ampeg, like solid state bass head, and I had a guitar and bass stack and experimented with that for a little bit, kind of
Yeah.
doing the same thing like you were saying, like your friend. And
Hmm.
I've seen a bunch of bands do that where a guitar player is running a bass and guitar rig at the same time, and
Yeah.
super interesting to me. For I, it does. It sounds huge.
Do
I,
do you know that band Mutilatred?
yes.
Like I
Dan
think they're Ohio based, or maybe
Dan Dan
uh
something. I'm spacing on his name.
Patrick, God, what the hell's his name? He's a tattooer. He works somewhere in Ohio. Anyway,
Yeah.
they're sort of a local death metal band, or we played on enough shows with them. And I remember for years them not having a live bass player, and they would run like an A/B switch and have like an octaver. So like the one went to a 5150 and the other went to a bass amp with the
Hmm.
octaver, whatever. But yeah, these kind of interesting workarounds for stuff like that.
Sure.
Um, Luckily, I'm in a band with a really good bass player, but like I said, the filling out the sound is the one guitar player thing. Sometimes I'll try to find like ways around that. So like my one I've been doing for the last couple of years is any of the Helix patches with cleans on them. I usually have a delay on, but I've been putting a really tiny delay on the distorted channels too. So it's like you don't even hear the repeat. It's just offset enough to be like, oh shit, there could be two people playing this.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So like just kind of an offset, real small delay. And then my lead track, or my lead tone, I use two delays on as well, which just kind of helps fatten it up. So one is dedicated repeats and the other just thickens it.
What's your which I used to have several Helix products. I went from the HX effects to run with my dual rectifier to the Podgo to the Stomp, and then ended up jumping over to Kemper altogether. But with both units, you can, and the Kemper, it's called the delay widener. I
Yeah.
saw that Wes Hauk uses it with Alluvial, and
Yep.
people think he has like a backing track going just because
Yeah.
yeah, the delay and the bouncing to the other side kind of um, a more efficient way. I was talking about this with somebody recently. A more efficient version of the MXR flanger doubler from back in the day, kind of
Oh
thing.
yeah. Yeah. I think Dimebag was a huge proponent of those too.
Oh yeah.
Recordings. Um, I got the idea to do it from actually listening to a studio album by a band, and I like in my ears, what it sounds like they did is they reamped the same guitar track through a different rig and then
Hmm.
offset it a little. So it's probably like single take rhythm tracks, but it's this band called Ossuary, and the album's called
Oh,
Bestial Triumph. It's within the last few years it was released.
okay.
Um, they're super sick. They've been kind of like on one of my like heavy lifting playlists for the gym or whatever, but it's almost like real grimy. Like if you took like deicide riffs and like slowed them down to like kind of a mid-pace groove and then put like these just really nasty vocals with some like reverb on them over them, like kind of like a more black metal sounding vocal. Um, but the guitar tone is just fucking huge as shit, and you can tell it's probably a reamp track. And I'm just like, damn, like they
Hmm.
did this like the smart, like put in this amount of effort and get this much out of it way. I'm like, fuck, man, I gotta get on this. So
Yeah.
I'm just dipping my toes in right now and kind of doing it for live use. I will say last year in November we were lucky enough to play a show with Ulcerate in Detroit, and dude, their guitar tone super sick anyway, but very similar to us in that it's one guitar player, bass player, drummer. But they run a fucking wet dry rig, and I think it just makes the clarity pop so much more because you can tell there's parts that has something a little sauce on them, some kind of
Yeah.
effect, but the main riff comes through like super clear. So I mess around with that a little bit. The only thing with the wet dry and the Helix is it means I got to run basically like a 7 cable method. So I'll have a
Mm,
separate, like I could use the JMP's power amp to the other ones. So have this one be the wet and this one be the dry, or vice versa.
hmm.
And then I have it's probably not in frame, but below this rack is a Port City 2x12. I usually run both of those at practice. And then, like, depending on the venue, it's usually either the Omega or both if I am big enough to get away with it where we're
Sure.
playing. But yeah, the wet dry rigs, man, that's like the way to go. When we do the albums, I usually do the cleans in a wet dry. So,
Yeah.
like, sometimes those layers of delay will get kind of muddy, so I'll kind of use less delay in the studio, make that track a little lower in the mix, and bring up like a more clean, I guess I'd call it. So yeah, dude, anything like that I can do to like maintain a gnarly gross tone while having all the notes come through, I'm like, sign me up. Like that's the magic formula right there.
It was funny. I was just talking to somebody else about, trying to run like their like time-based effects and stuff like that through two rigs simultaneously, or like I guess they're doing a wet dry rig now,
Yeah.
and just wanting to see what kind of options of running stereo effects. And I don't know. I think I'm with you. I think I've done it just to experiment before, because again, I'm a nerd like that, and I would just
Yeah,
try
no, it's fun.
different configurations for the hell of it.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I think I'm with you on preferring the wet dry, because you can
Yeah.
kind of like, we'll take a delay or something like that as an example. You can turn it up way, the mix or whatever on it way more now, and you can kind of get this cool like wash of an effect and like really hear it doing that, and then still get complete and total clarity from the other
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, it's yeah, like in the studio, man, I'll do whatever. There's a lot of experimenting. The last album, like I put there's some backwards guitar on there and spots, stuff like that. And it was just a matter of having a little extra time and thinking like, fuck it. If it sucks, I'll just leave the track off. If not, I got something cool. But yeah, when we do any tracking like that, having even my scratch tracks, I prefer those to be dry and not have effects, even if it's going to be a part where I'm going to throw effects on the actual track. It's just a little bit easier if I don't already hear like a phaser going off in my ear to know when to throw it on, stuff like
Sure.
that. But yeah, the stuff with us, we've kind of just been in writing mode right now. Sort of we got a show, I don't know when this is going to come out. We have a show February 29th in Bloomington, Indiana. It's actually a college show for like inclusivity in metal. And it's us and a band from Minneapolis called Udimon, I think is their name. Don't quote me on that. I'm terrible at black metal names. But it yeah, it's basically just a one shot in a college town, but the response we've been getting for it's been pretty cool lately. So
Oh
we
yeah.
just kind of got that. We got a couple of local shows on the horizon, and then we're just sort of in writing mode right now, hoping to have something come out like early 2025, I would say, hit the studio late this year.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it'll be good. And then we got some other cool stuff. So we got a couple buddies that are actually doing like reimaginings of songs off the last album. So I basically gave them the raw stem tracks for them,
Hmm.
and they're pretty cool. They both are really like industrial music kind of driven,
Okay.
and the one I'm particularly excited about because my buddy, his name's Jesse. He actually does Say You Love Satan podcast. I don't know if you follow them. It's like a horror movie podcast.
I feel like somebody has shared their thing. I've seen that
He's
name.
uh he's got like a death metal project with Ben Eller called Corpse Master.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen any of those tracks. They've released a couple. They're really good, but Jesse rules. So I sent him the stems, and I think he's gonna do like the second song on the album, "Stay in the Field." I think he's gonna do that where he actually just cuts it into other pieces and adds like industrial stuff to it. So it's gonna be like a different song by the time he's done with it.
Yeah.
Um, there's like a '90s kid who grew up listening to like all the White Zombie and Marilyn Manson albums, and then their remix albums, which usually only had one good song on it. I'm actually excited to get this product out there. Hopefully, there's more than one good song, but yeah. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of get that pushed out, and then we might be doing a new video shoot for one of the album tracks coming up here. I know we've already got them for a couple, but yeah, just kind of keep pushing more into the machine, I guess, and see what we get out of it this year.
Sure. Which I've been so back and forth with industrial in my lifetime, but like the last year or two, whenever oh shit. Not Abyssal, even though Abyssal is awesome.
Abyssal
Um
is awesome. Definitely use electronic drums because there's two hi-hats and a lot of parts.
yeah. What's oh my God. I listen to the record all the time, and I even tried writing a track kind of inspired by this band, and I am totally spacing on the name. It's Scott Kelly from Neurosis was involved with it. Um
Oh shit.
super super heavy, like death metal inspired industrial kind of stuff. You know
That
what?
just drives me crazy now too.
Hang on. I pause the podcast. This is important. It's gotta be. Oh, absent and body.
Oh yeah, someone was. I've heard of that too, man.
And um, I've grown to, and I kind of dismissed. Some people will probably think this is kind of blasphemous, but I even kind of dismissed a lot of Godflesh. Like people would play for me, this Street Cleaner.
Mhm.
That's like the classic one, I guess.
It's a go-to. Yeah,
Yeah, and I was like, okay. It's like maybe if I heard this when I was a teenager, I would have vibed with it, but I think I was like just too late to the party.
yeah.
But then I heard the world a world lit only by fire. I think that's the name of it, and I'm like, okay, this is killer. This is heavier than a lot of death metal albums out now.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, okay, this is the kind of industrial I like, and like monotheist I can't fucking talk. Monotheist era, Celtic Frost, Triptychon, that whole thing. So just darker, heavier
You
industrial. So
you know what's it's funny you mentioned that the sort of the later era, the tuning to B era of Tom V Warrior's work is most mean comments Felrune gets online say something like Celtic Frost clone, and I do not hear it at all. I'm
really?
like, just because we hold an open B note every once in a while, like yeah, dude, I've seen
Huh.
that a couple times, or like mean album reviews. There's always a couple, but I'm like, dude, that never even crossed my mind. And like, to be honest, like I love Monotheist as an album. The other guitar player on there, V Santura, the dude from Dark Fortress, those Dark Fortress albums, like the last three or four, I have thought have been some of the best produced black metal that I've heard in a really, really long time. Kind of sucks they're not around as a band anymore. I think they just did a final tour, but yeah, their singer was he's in that Alkaloid band with like Christian Muenzer and
Okay.
Hans Grossman or whatever, and he's like a crazy guitar player too. He did a there's a documentary, you should check it out. So it's that dude from Dark Fortress, and he's doing an orchestra with like a German orchestra, and he's playing like a seven string like neck through BC Rich Warlock in it
What?
with an orchestra. It's great, and he's got like that condition in his hands, like Tosin Abasi, with like the really flexible joints. So it's
Okay.
like it's real wild to watch this guy's hands when he plays guitar because he can bar something with like the first pad of his finger, and the rest of them will just be like out in space, and just at will he can bend it to mute on the strings without moving the joint. It's so weird looking, but I'm kind of jealous in a way because it looks way easier. But yeah, that's a pretty wild little music documentary. I can't. His name is like Florian Magnus Meyer. It's something very German, but just look up Dark
Hmm.
Fortress Singer. He
Yeah.
he's like a guitar player of like the Sean Lane level of
Oh
craziness,
shit.
like shockingly good.
Yeah. What God, I fucking love Sean Lane too.
Were you into a lot of like the shredder dudes coming up?
Oh, 100%. My musical journey from 15 to 17 went like radio butt rock type stuff to um I guess a handful of metal stuff like Kill, Era Cannibal Corpse, and Children and early Children of Bodom.
Okay.
Weird pairing. And then from there it turned into like nothing but like 80s shred guys like Vi Satriani, Sean Lane, and Michelangelo Badio, and I
Oh
became
yeah.
just shred obsessed for a while.
Like a lot of people think I was always drawn to Vi, especially when I was playing like nothing but universes. And like
Hmm.
I remember the first time I heard like the intro to Passion and Warfare, and I'm just like, holy shit, like for love of God, like that shit is amazing. Like just so it kind of opened my eyes to like shred not just being fast, but also being like really emotive too.
Yeah.
But hands down, my guys were always like Paul Gilbert and then Marty Friedman. Like and Marty's technique is just too weird for me. Like everyone talks about how he kind of
Oh
wraps his
yeah.
hand around when he's picking, but just in terms of like the way that guy approaches note selection with his left hand is so fucking slick. Like kind of slide and do like a double bend into a note before he kind of takes it all the way up. It's just like anyone that can have that sense of melodic control, whether for pleasant or dissonant stuff, or tend to be the kind of people that I'm drawn to as players. So like I
Yeah.
kind of went through a whole phase of like Guthrie and Alan Holdsworth, kind of like listening to these fusion guys, and it wasn't so much like fusion music didn't like get in my bones the way like metal did, but like the expressiveness of it did, or like the
Sure.
technique and kind of seeing how the puzzle fits together always helped.
Yeah. I think I'm there with you. I love a lot of shrapnel records type shredder guys. Ate up with that, and definitely nerd out on just crazy like sweep patterns and all that. But I'd say Marty Friedman is uh, I was also early on real big into just worshiping Zach Wild and Dimebag Darrell.
Oh
And
yeah,
they're kind of like I kind of think of them as the quintessential like guitar god. Um, and I would put them in the category of like Slash and a lot of those guys. Are they the best in the world? Not by a long, well, Zach's up there. But the guitar players that aren't the best ever, like we could probably name half a dozen that would, wipe the floor with them, like Rusty Cooley or somebody.
yeah,
But they just kind of hit that right spot of, you know, just making it big and writing awesome records. And they're really, really good guitar players too.
yeah.
Um,
I was definitely a Dimebag kid growing up.
sure.
Every guitar I owned until I was probably like 28 had a Floyd on it. So it was
Yeah.
just like fucking pulling those cemetery gate harmonics and stuff. But even like, it's funny, like mentioning like him and Zach, like even like how close those dudes were and stuff. Besides their playing both being rooted kind of bluesy pentatonic,
Yeah.
they approach it so fucking different.
Oh yeah.
Like like Dime for me was like where I got my legato chops, like learning that fucking the lead at the end of Domination, dude, the breakdown lead, like that kind of stuff. I'm like, he's not tapping that, he's doing that all with his pinky. Are you kidding me? So I remember, dude, sitting there in 10th grade class with Nerf balls I brought from home to stretch out my hands like this in between the fingers just to try to widen it more to get those big almost like a full octave stretch
Yeah.
basically. Yeah, about 10 frets up there. But yeah, yeah, he was always really huge for me. And then Zach was kind of like the alternate picking side of it too.
Hmm.
Um I loved hair metal stuff growing up. So I actually went kind of in reverse from listening to like No More Tears to like going back, and I'm listening to like Miracle Man and songs like
Yeah.
that. And then through that stuff and people shit talking on forums is like where I learned about like John Sykes, like
Yeah.
that guy's tone on the first Murder album and that White Snake album from 1987. He was using some amp called like a Coliseum that Mesa made. They were only made for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
It's like it's such a fucking good rock tone. It's like if you goosed it a little more, you'd be approaching like that like Alice in Chains kind of facelift era levels of distortion, but just
Hmm.
the way it's on there, it's like it's hair metal tone with like real low end. Like it's pretty
Right.
badass. So yeah,
I
I pull influence from everywhere, dude.
Same. Like it's also fucking cool. Um, but yeah. The melodic expressiveness, which is funny for death metal and extreme metal in general. But um, I don't know. I, I feel like I all even stuff that might not sound like super melodic. Like I'm not saying everything has to be like mellow death, you
Yeah,
know. We don't. It doesn't have to all be at the gates riffs or a monomarth.
yeah,
But
yeah.
even like really heavy, ugly shit, I still there's still technically some sort of sense of melody in there, even if it's very disjointed.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
a melody is just a thing. It can be ugly or pretty kind of thing.
Exactly.
So that's the way I look at it. It's more, I guess the modern equivalent would be like an earworm, like something that just gets stuck in your head. And
Yeah.
I've had plenty of non-pleasant riffs stuck in my head for days on end. So it's like, yeah, I'm still like, at that point in playing music where I don't feel that I the perfect riff or perfect song exists, but I'm gonna do what I can to get there kind of thing.
Sure.
Our drummer just sent me a video the other day, and it was Steve Vai talking about Alan Holdsworth, and I'm like, this is amazing right off the bat. But he's like, this is Vai kind of, and I'll summarize it. But he says that basically people always talk about having an emotional connection to music or using it for emotional expressiveness, but he's like, Holdsworth was beyond that. He was just connected to the music. So like
Hmm.
that's kind of where I want to be. Like even like I got a pretty good ear. I can usually listen to a band, at least tell you what tuning they're in, and then just start figuring out songs from there. But to just sort of have that vocabulary on tap and be able to just pull it out to fit in. A lot of like when I write the leads for Felrune kind of starts as me knowing the chords and sort of following along what scales can I use here and what scales can I use there. And it's a lot of trial and error. And I would say from when I first start plotting stuff out to last take, it's maybe 20% of what I originally started with. So like I'd like to be more in a position where those little demented ideas in my head can just jump out of the fretboard pretty quick instead of kind of figuring them out through going back and forth trial and error stuff.
Hell yeah.
And like, don't get me wrong, like I love the happy accidents and like that path of discovery. Like that's kind of a big driving thing for me as a musician now is like
Hmm.
I'm not I mean, I'm not at a point where I'm like seeking out new techniques to learn. Like I learned like sweep picking and stuff like that when I was a kid, and if I can implement it in songs, great. If not, I'm not like gonna force it in there.
Right.
But just kind of having that foresight as maybe a someone who's been kind of through the ringer or played in bands for a minute of knowing when to go all out and when not to. Because I like when I was a kid, man, it was like so like here's a funny story. When I was 18, I was in this band who I was still in high school. We got signed to a record label and it was kind of like industrial punk music. But the guy that ran the label was Mikey Clark, who produced all the Insane Clown Posse albums. So like it was a period where I guess he's cool with them now, but he had a falling out with them and he was like brought this young band in, and I was the youngest member of the band. Like everyone else in the band was like in their mid 20s, probably like 23, 24. And here I am, like 18, still in high school, and I'm going to record, then sleeping for 2 hours and falling asleep in school because I'm in the studio all night. But dude, I was just like, it's so musically immature is the way I would put it. Like I just a fucking dive bomb everywhere I could squeeze one in on an album, kind of that kind of stuff. And now
Yeah.
I kind of have the wherewithal to save that stuff for when it matters. Because I think
Hmm.
like for Felrune, that's sort of the way we come across as heavier sometimes, is we can contrast it with these sort of melodic or somber parts, and then just boom, come in with something, and people are like, "Oh my god, this is hell on earth," because what they were just hearing was sort of so pleasant in their ears. We can contrast it, and the kicker is most of the time we don't even have to go like heavy to do it. If you're already playing something that's that happy sounding, you can just blast them a little bit and kind of ramp it up from there. So it's kind of like this balancing act between figuring out when is it excessive, when are you overplaying, stuff like that. And yeah, that's kind of just where I'm at musically, I guess.
Oh yeah. I know you talked about, obviously doing the industrial release and everything. What are some goals that you currently have for both yourself as a musician as well as with Fell Ruin?
Okay, yeah. So like this month is the 1 year anniversary of me having carpal tunnel surgery on this hand. I did the other one the December before, so I got like 14 months on my left. So like my playing is like just now fully coming back. I feel like for about a year I was like 70%. So one of like my personal goal as a musician this year is actually to go to my favorite music shop in Berkeley, Michigan, and start either doing classical lessons, which I did as a kid, or going into jazz territory just to kind of get my hands moving in a different way, sort of maybe break out of some old patterns and stuff like that, but also to kind of reinforce them because that surgery was brutal, dude. Like I couldn't open a jar of peanut butter for like 2 weeks. And like I'm asking the doctor, I'm like, can we just do both of them at once? I don't want to deal with all this healing. And he's like, no, you won't be able to wipe your own ass. And I go, I bet I could. And he goes, if you want to be on a fetish site, like the doctor literally said that to me. I'm like, okay, I guess we'll skip it. But yeah, it was like I couldn't do a number three like this with my hand for like months. I had to go like this if I was going to do it. So I just started doing all these like PT exercises. Aesop Mongo from No Cure, I was talking to them, same exact thing, but I think it's only their right wrist they've had done, which they're lucky. The fret hand was way worse to come back. Um, so yeah, and for me, it would maybe be like just kind of take these different form of lessons just to kind of get my hands moving a little differently. I still consider it sort of the therapy of this stuff. And then you kind of touched on it earlier with when you said downsizing. I'm actually trying to do that right now too because my collection's just gotten so bloated, and it's like there's maybe 5, 6 guitars I really love and use, and then 2 or 3 amps. So like there's a lot of stuff I'm trying to move right now just to I stare at like 25 guitars in the room and I'm like, that's so many fucking strings a year just to change them once, stuff like that. And like I take decent care of my stuff, but I see guitars more as tools now, so I don't really sweat dings on them. But as far
Yeah.
as like being intonated and clean frets and stuff like that, I take that pretty seriously. So regardless, I'm looking at least one string change a year on 25, 26 guitars. And then, expensive tubes can be in amps too. So that's just its whole own thing. So yeah, I'm trying to live a little leaner on the gear and have less stress, hopefully, as a result. And then with the band right now, we're sort of in our writing mode. When we do that, we usually don't play a lot of shows, but last year we decided we're going to play at least one local show every month and then any other opportunity that comes up. And it's like kind of like being more open to these gigs and stuff. It's opened up like a lot of really interesting paths for us. So like last year we got to play a show at like a borderline like secret ticket only event for the Satanic Temple of Detroit. And like we were the only band on it, and it was in this old church with like amazing acoustics, like stuff like that. We did a house show for Halloween 2 years ago just for fuck it, but it was in this house that's basically funded on an art grant, and every room is like a weird different thing. And once again, like we're the only heavy band on the bill. The other person there was like there was a horror rapper and then a DJ and then a woman that stuck like needles in her eyeballs. So like we keep taking these unique bookings, and it's like it's getting us really good exposure, and we're seeing a lot of these people that were maybe at the one strange show we played now at our regular show. So it's like this very like boots on the ground movement to get people to shows any way we can. So we're going to do that and then just kind of grab whatever opportunities come out on the road. We did a run last year, kind of Midwest through the East a little bit with this band called Moynock, which I believe they're from North Carolina, I want to say. But they're kind of a black metal band, maybe a little less dissonant focused than us, but
Hmm.
totally broed out with them on the road. So it's kind of like we do these like little micro tours or kind of transactional shows, trade shows with a lot of bands. So it's the networking's definitely starting to open up for us and pay off. So I'm hoping we can get a West Coast run in the next year would be pretty sweet.
Hell yeah. Well, congratulations, man.
Thanks.
Hope it continues to kind of grow from there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, me too.
but man, we pretty much ran through the gamut of talking points, I believe. Um, so we'll kind of bring this a bit to a close to the fun one that we always like to end these with, and it's top four death metal bands and or albums.
Yep. I was talking to Jeff about this question in particular. We had practice here on Wednesday, and I'm like, dude, what am I gonna do? Do I talk about like the bands everyone knows about that we all listened to growing up, or do I do something else? And he's like, do something weird. So what I was thinking I would do is maybe not top four of all time because it's way too fucking hard for me. I could go on about like Covenant or Once Upon the Cross for like a year straight of why I
Sure.
love those albums, but we all love those albums. So I was thinking I would talk to you about a couple like maybe more off the beaten path or not traditional death metal, and it's basically the four I listen to the most at the gym in this current time period. So the one we already talked about earlier, that band Ossuary,
Hmm.
Bestial Triumph, that album fucking it slays. It's very heavy and just kind of plotting like mid-paced like deathy doom. So I would give it up to them for one. And then there's this band from California called Vastum. Are you familiar with them?
No, no, I don't know
All
them.
right. They come across as like an early 90s like Florida death metal vibe, but they're a modern band, and it's there's two vocalists. There's actually a female guitar player that does a lot of the lead vocals or like backups on songs. We played a festival with them in Baltimore like the week before COVID happened, like late February 2020, and I was also really high on mushrooms, but I was
Huh.
fucking blown away by their live performance. It's just so aggro, like amazing. But they had an album come out, I think it was in 2019, called Orificial Purge. That album fucking rules. Um, it's not typical death metal fodder. The riffs are really really heavy, like early incantation vibes maybe, but the lyrics are about like failed relationships and stuff like that, but presented in a really really fucking dark way.
Huh.
So like highly recommend that Orificial Purge by Vastum. Another band, and this is one we were kind of listening to on the road a lot. I wouldn't call them death metal, but it's really heavy. It's called Light of the Morning Star, and the album's called Charnel Noir. It's basically a vampire death rock album, but like
Hmm.
the content is so heavy, and it's got these really like doomy kind of British vocals on it. So like songs about like shadows moving and just kind of it's not as like Shakespearean as like Cradle of Filth lyrics tend to be. They're a little more
Yeah.
accessible, but it's just real fucking grimy and dark.
Okay.
So I would definitely check that out. And then my last one, I'm gonna go with a controversial choice, and it's an album a lot of people know, but Dissection Rain Chaos. A lot of people fucking hate that album. And I think
Do
that
they?
album yeah, it's always getting shit on. I'm like, dude, I watched a interview with the lead singer from Obscura where he was like defending that album, and I'm like, why do you have to defend it? It's fucking great. But it's
I love that album.
yeah, the way I've always looked at that album is like what happened like right after it came out. Like Novell like killed himself. So I'm
Yeah.
like, holy shit, like this album was like the suicide note he wrote in prison is what I feel like. It's kind of like a final send off, but just so beautifully crafted in layers. There's layers upon layers of guitar in that album, and it's all like kind of in that melodic death metal sense of just kind of interlocking and falling together beautifully. But
Hmm.
the lead guitars will sort of do like a counterpoint to where one's sort of ascending a scale while the other's descending, and they'll kind of cross in the middle and harmonize and then jump out of it. And anything like that, like smart guitar playing or clever guitar playing is always gonna kind of catch my ear. So like
Oh, sure.
love the shit out of that album. And
I
people are probably gonna hate all my choices.
I don't yeah, maybe I'm just avoiding the right circles. But no, I didn't know that album got shit on. I thought people were into it. I mean, he was
It's just
certainly
it's
into it
so
enough.
different. It's so different from like the traditional early dissection
Yeah.
far as being, really, really tremolo picked, like aggressive. They were like for me, like Dissection and then Emperor were like the masters of like kind of barring a chord and fluttering through it to where each individual note rang out. And like that in itself was like a technique for me that I feel like is sort of relegated to black metal, but no one teaches it. So you got to kind of figure out on your own. So like for me, it was like as a kid learning to use like the side of my thumb to mute the lower strings as I'm playing through it and stuff like that. And it's like there's a lot more tricks involved in black metal than people think. I think people tend to think of it as like more akin to like punk with how guitar is approached. Because like a lot of those early bands, that's probably what they had to go off was like, Discharge and whatever back then in the late 80s in
Right.
Sweden. So it's like just kind of picking up on like those kind of nuanced techniques to present black metal but optimize like total clarity. I think like Dissection were fucking masters of that.
I could agree to that. Um, and I could see some people not being into how melodic some stuff was. Um, if all you listen to is like super ugly dissonant, like you're more Death Spell Omega or
Oh
whatever,
yeah,
then
yeah,
yeah,
Worlds
sure, it
Apart.
might not be for you. I get that, but yeah, like you said though, it's like such fucking great songwriting.
Yeah, it's just so strong in that album, dude. And like it's one of those ones I'm sure he wrote it while he was in prison, but there's enough variation between the songs. It almost reminds me of another album I'm a fan of. Stylistically, a big change for the band was like Puritanical Misanthrope, the Demu album with like the
Yeah,
lady torso on it.
yeah.
There's that one song in there that sounds like Rammstein. You know what I'm talking about, like Puritania or whatever it's called.
I have to go back and hear it.
Yeah, if you heard it, you'll know right away. But
Sure.
it was kind of like one of those black metal bands that, oh my god, they're not using the same tuning for every song. I'm like, what is this? Like they weren't afraid of key changes and stuff like that. And for me, it helps kind of break up the samey same sounding stuff of
Hmm.
bands. So like ties into like what Felrune does, where if we can get on like these weird or diversified bills, I feel like we end up standing out in that regard. So like we're trying to make the music stand out accordingly too. And so like take a lot of influence, man, from those kind of like the more offbeat albums
Yeah.
like that. Or like Gorguts I could talk about all day, like Obscura, even like we were lucky enough to play a show in Philly with Dysrhythmia, which is Colin and Kevin's like trio instrumental band from Gorguts. And it was pretty sick. Like talk to Colin, like they were into us and stuff. And I'm like, fuck, we're doing something right if these guys are like
Right.
noticing. But
Absolutely.
yeah, anything that kind of pushes the envelope in a weird way or shows like how to break a rule but still have like a piece of music as a result, like I'm all about that.
Fuck yeah. Well, dude, I just want to thank you for coming on here and hanging out. It's
No
been a
problem, man.
pleasure. Loved picking your brain on some of what goes into Fell Ruin and the tones and songwriting and all that. Before we go, is there anything you want to plug real quick for everybody?
Yeah, I'll just say we have a show coming up if it's going to be out by then, February 29th in Bloomington, Indiana. It's being hosted by Black Metal's Rainbows, and it's an all-inclusive black metal show. So come check that out if you're in the area. If not, be on the lookout for our remix stuff coming out soon, and probably another music video.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks again, man, and thank everybody
Thank
for
you.
tuning in.
Yeah, for
I'll
sure.
include, as always, I'll include links down below. Check out Fell Ruin. Um,
Appreciate that.
again, killer band. You've heard us wax poetic about it long enough. You should, if you haven't heard it, you should have a rough idea by now, hopefully. So please go check it out, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, dude.